Published in 1939, John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath is a cornerstone of American social realism. Set during the Great Depression, the narrative follows the Joad family, Oklahoma sharecroppers driven from their land by the Dust Bowl and corporate greed. Led by the resilient Ma Joad and the paroled Tom Joad, they journey along Highway 66 to the promised land of California, only to face exploitation and starvation. Steinbeck employs a gritty, documentary-like style to champion the dignity of the working class, exploring themes of social injustice, the endurance of the human spirit, and the transition from I to we. The novel opens with Tom Joad, a young man recently released from prison after serving time for killing a man in self-defense. On his way home, Tom meets Jim Casey, a former preacher who has given up his ministry but still believes deeply in love, justice, and helping others. Together, they travel to the Joad family farm, only to find it deserted and abandoned. The bank has evicted the Joads, along with many others, due to unpaid debts. Tom finds his family staying at his Uncle John's house nearby. Ma Joad, the strong and determined mother, is preparing the family to head west to California, hoping to find work and a new beginning. The Joads have seen handbills promising jobs picking fruit, and although they are unsure what to expect, they set out with hope. The journey west on Route 66 is long and complex. The Joads squeeze into an old, worn-out truck and take only the essentials. Along the way, they face mechanical breakdowns, illness, and death. Grandpa Joad, the oldest member of the family, dies shortly after the trip begins. Despite their sorrow, the family continues. As they travel, the Joads encounter other migrant families on their way to California. They hear troubling news: there may not be enough jobs for everyone. Still, the Joads press on. Along the way, Grandma Joad also dies, just before the family arrives in California. Ma hides the death until they can cross the desert. Once in California, the Joads quickly realize that life there is not as hopeful as they had imagined it to be. There are too many workers and too few jobs. Wages are extremely low, and the migrants are treated with suspicion and hostility by local residents and authorities. The Joads live in Hoovervilles, makeshift camps of desperate people searching for work. Tom learns from Casey and others that big landowners keep wages low by hiring only the most desperate workers. Anyone who tries to organize or protest is arrested or beaten. Casey begins organizing workers to demand fair pay and better conditions. When he leads a small strike, he is killed by a police officer during a fight. In response, Tom kills the officer and goes into hiding to protect his family. Fearing for Tom's safety, Ma Joad secretly helps him escape. Tom decides to carry on Casey's work by dedicating his life to helping the poor and fighting for justice. Meanwhile, the Joads continue to suffer from hunger and hardship. They move from one labor camp to another, always struggling to find steady work. Sometimes, they pick peaches or cotton, but the pay is barely enough to make a living. In one of the government-run wheat patch camps, the family experiences temporary relief. This camp is run more fairly, with self-governing rules and no harassment from the authorities. For a short time, the Joads find dignity and community. However, there is still not enough work, and the family eventually has to leave again to search for income. As the story nears its end, Rose of Sharon, Tom's pregnant sister, gives birth to a stillborn baby. The family is devastated, both emotionally and physically exhausted. In the final scene, after being forced to shelter in an old barn during a flood, the Joads find a starving man inside. Despite her grief, Rose of Sharon breastfeeds the man to save his life, offering a powerful image of human compassion and survival. The Grapes of Wrath is a profound indictment of systemic inequality and a celebration of collective resilience. Its central theme, the primacy of the group over the individual, is masterfully developed as the Joads lose their nuclear family structure in favor of a broader, universal family. Steinbeck's motivation was deeply political and humanitarian. He sought to expose the horrific living conditions of migrant workers to provoke social reform. Today, the work remains hauntingly relevant. Human-driven ecological collapse, migrant workers, and the awakening of ex-convicts are still hot political topics. In an era of crises and widening wealth gaps, Steinbeck's masterpiece continues to challenge readers to define moral obligations toward the displaced and the dispossessed. The story can be harrowing and sad, and the language may be advanced, but it teaches important lessons. It shows how people should help one another, fight for fairness, and never lose hope. Even when things seem hopeless, kindness and courage still matter. Readers can learn a great deal about history, family, and standing up for what is right. If you agree with Steinbeck's worldview and like stories about bravery and human strength, this book is worth reading.